Recently I started reading a lot more, and I really got to thinking about some stuff, and thought about books and how I used to not read, and I used to look at books and I was like, oh, screw that, I'm not reading that. That looks dumb. And I would look at the cover and there'd be nothing on the cover, and that would be why I didn't read the book, you know. And then I started reading some of these books, whether it was the Bible or whether it was Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, or whether it was The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, or whether it was A Separate Peace, or whatever the book is. And all these books that I just love, that changed my life and made me think and inspired me and touched my soul, they were really awesome, and the cover sucked. I mean, maybe that's harsh to say it, but like, the cover was not what attracted me to that book. It was what was on the inside. And as I started to read the book, I really connected with it. Almost like it was like you could connect with another person, like you could connect with a song that really resonated with you, like I don't know, like you could connect with a really awesome day. And the only way I could do that was by being engaged in that experience, by really giving myself to that, lending myself to that book, by paying attention, by seeing what the book had to offer. And you know, as I started spending more and more time at the library and increasing my library and looking at books on my shelf and at library shelves, I see these books just sitting on shelves, and I'm like, they're just sitting there, and like no one wants to read them, or not very many people want to read them. And there are these awesome books. I've learned that there's just so much in these awesome books. But the truth is, these books are well known with a lot of people. There's a really good core group of people that have read them. Millions of people have read the Bible. Millions of people have read Ernest Hemingway, Sylvia Plath, you know, so on and so forth. And it's not because they were out there promoting, saying, look at me, look at me, look at me, being dazzling, exciteful and extravagant in what they were doing. It wasn't because they had the greatest cover art, the most awesome sign, the best ad campaign, or anything like that. It was only because of what the message was on the inside of that book. And while most of the time you talk to someone about reading, they're like, oh, stupid, screw that, I don't read, that's dumb. The people that really have substance and really appreciate that book, they're like, they could tell you about the book that they've read, and they're like, yeah, I dig Robert Frost, or I dig Shakespeare. That's really dope. But they stopped and read it. And I really started to think about that with my life, with my story. Isn't it so opposite of what some people do with their life story? I'll explain that. So, have you ever been at a bus stop, or just sitting outside in a waiting room at a doctor's appointment, and someone will just tell you their life story? And it's not that you don't care, but it's like, whoa, that's a lot. That's a lot of information. And I don't even know you. And why are you telling me that about what happened to you? I don't even know you. I don't need to know about that side of you. I don't need to know about, you know, your ex. I don't need to know about how you lost your house. I don't need to know about that addiction. I don't need to know about that sexual history, nothing like that. Why are you telling me that? And I also thought about that with what I'd been doing. I used to have I still have a story. I have an incredible story, and I think a lot of people have an incredible story. I think we passed the microphone to anybody, or not anybody, but almost anybody, and just listen to them for 30 minutes or 60 minutes. We could just hear the most incredible story ever. But it doesn't mean you have to tell it all the time. But I used to tell that story all the time to anybody and everybody that used to listen. And I think I kind of sold myself short, because instead of letting people get to know me, I just told them who I was. Instead of letting people decide and make that choice to get to know me, I did it for them. I showed them who I was. I showed them who I was in that story, regardless of, maybe they would have found out I was someone else had they got to know me different. But I told them my story the way I told it, and they saw me as I showed them who I was in my story, and not who they would have got to know me. And maybe I sold myself short, because people change. And the other thing is, in my story is that if you quit going to people, let's say you had a bad story. Most of the times when people tell their story, it's a bad story. When you go to people with your bad story, you're going to them a lot of times with your need. You're telling them about your need. And you're not telling them about your seed. It's something I've talked about a lot. When you continually go to someone with your need, you come off as a liability, and it becomes exhausting. And people have their own needs. And it's like, dude, I got no time for you. I got my own problems. Like, sorry. So that's another reason why people don't want to hear about all the crappy things that have happened to you, because they've had crappy things happen to them too, and they're like, bro, no one cares, because no one cared about me, so I don't want to hear it. We all have crappy lives, so just get used to it. It's kind of where people come from. So I think the answer is just live that life of substance. Go and help people. Ask yourself, what can I do in this situation to make people's life better? How can I show people who I am through my deeds? Ask people what they need. How are they doing? Ask people if you can pray for them. Ask people what they need help with. How can you help them? If there's anything you can do for them, stop and listen to that person. Do that. And then eventually, I think what will happen is people are going to hear that story about you, or people are going to read that story about you through your deeds. Just like that story that they read that takes a long time through making the choice of engagement. When you pick up a book, if you continually do deed after deed after deed, people are going to choose to tune in. And they're going to find this story that's not promoted, that's authentic, and it's just like that you've put yourself into it and you haven't advertised it, and it's just you being you. And I don't know, maybe that's just the truest version of yourself. And maybe ultimately that's the end goal of satisfying what you want by people appreciating you, because eventually people are going to see what you want them to see. Whether that is that, wow, you're an awesome person, wow, you've overcame things, wow, you've done good things. If you just put yourself in a good position by legitimately caring about people, asking them how you can help them, what you can do for their betterment, they're going to care a lot more about your story. It's going to help you have more transcendence than anything else. And we certainly see that with anybody that's achieved any kind of greatness. Most people that have achieved greatness, they always have asked themselves, what can I do for other people? JFK asked not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Jesus Christ laying his life down for our sins. Martin Luther King eventually becoming a martyr for civil rights. And by doing that, people in turn respect him more, because they accepted that it wasn't about them. They didn't care about their story or what they went through. They just said, you know what, I'm gonna try to make everybody else's life better. So don't focus so much on your story. Just try to write a better book.